The Queen of Intera was known by many names: the Crimson Storm, the Lioness of the North, the Tyrant in Silk. To her subjects, she was a deity of terror. To her court, a tempest in human form. And to her maid, she was simply Queen Lysandra. Tonight, the Queen's rage was at full bloom. The towering windows of the grand hall rattled as her voice rose, her crimson skirts billowing as she stormed down the marble floor. "They dared to insult me in my own court," she roared, her golden crown slipping slightly as she turned on her heel, her dark auburn hair unbound from its usual tight braids. "I should have their tongues removed. No, I should have their eyes gouged out, so they never again look upon a throne they do not respect." The nobles kept their heads bowed, their expressions carefully neutral. Only one figure dared to step forward: Elena, the Queen's personal maid. She moved without hesitation, placing a goblet of wine into the Queen's trembling hand. "A drink, Your Majesty," she said, her tone calm. "To steady your hand." Lysandra's sharp green eyes snapped to her. For a moment, the tension thickened. The room held its breath. Then, Lysandra exhaled, taking a long sip. The nobles relaxed, barely, but Elena did not. She had served this queen since she was a girl, knew her moods like the tides. And she knew that tonight's fury was not merely about an insult at court, it was about fear. And fear was the most dangerous emotion Lysandra possessed. Later that evening, Lysandra stood before her massive vanity, unbraiding her own hair, eyes dark with thought. "I should have them executed," she muttered. Elena, standing at her side, methodically brushing out the long waves of her queen's hair, made a small, dismissive sound. "No," she murmured. "That would be a mistake." Lysandra's reflection twisted into a scowl. "And what would you have me do? Maid, beg for their respect?" Elena's lips curled slightly. "Certainly not." She leaned in, voice lowering as though whispering to a friend. "You cannot kill everyone who opposes you, but you can remind them why they should fear you." Lysandra tilted her head, intrigued despite herself. "Go on." Elena's fingers were delicate as she lifted the Queen's hair into an intricate coil. "Public executions breed martyrs. But an enemy who suffers misfortune, whose fortune crumbles, whose allies abandon them, well, that teaches everyone a lesson, doesn't it?" A slow smile crept across the Queen's lips. Elena had always known the right words to say. That night, as the palace slumbered, Elena moved silently through its stone corridors. Her footsteps knew where to fall. She had walked these halls for years, had memorized the way they twisted, the hidden passages no one spoke of. Her destination was a locked door at the end of a deserted hallway, the Queen's personal archives. She pulled a slender pin from her sleeve, her fingers quick as she worked the lock. It clicked open after a moment, and she slipped inside. There were things the Queen did not want known, secrets buried deep in parchment and wax-sealed letters. And Elena knew where to look. She pulled a particular letter from the stack, its edges brittle with age. Her sharp eyes skimmed the words. A birth record. And there at the bottom was the signature of the late Queen Mother. Elena's heart pounded. She had suspected, but now, she knew. Lysandra was not the rightful heir to the throne. The revelation sat like a dagger in Elena's chest. If the court knew, if the nobles knew, the entire kingdom would turn against Lysandra. And yet, Elena did not take the letter. She did not burn it. She did not rush to expose her queen. Instead, she tucked it back where she found it, careful to leave no trace. Because Elena was not merely a maid, she was something far more dangerous. Days passed. The queen remained unaware that her most trusted servant knew her darkest secret. But Elena watched her more closely now. She studied Lysandra's sharp temper, her paranoid glances, the way she clenched her jaw when nobles whispered in corners. And in those small moments, Elena understood something. Lysandra had spent her life fighting for a throne that was never hers. And now, she ruled it not by birthright, but by force. And Elena respected that. She could have brought the queen to ruin with a single breath, but she did not. Because Elena did not want Lysandra to fall. She wanted her to reign. But on her terms, the kingdom simmered with unrest. Whispers of rebellion trickled through the streets. The nobles were gathering their forces. The court was waiting for a sign of weakness, and Elena knew they would not wait long. One evening, as she combed through the queen's hair, she spoke softly. "You should host a feast," she suggested. Lysandra scoffed. "A feast? In the midst of treason?" Elena smirked. "It's precisely when you should host one." A pause. Then, the queen laughed. "You always were a wicked little thing." Elena merely smiled. The great hall was alight with golden torches and flowing wine. The queen sat at the head of the table, her gown the color of fresh blood, her crown gleaming. The nobles laughed, their eyes watchful, and then without warning, the queen stood Elena. She purred, motioning her forward. Elena stepped forward, her expression unreadable. The queen raised her goblet. "A toast," she declared, "to the only soul in this court who has never betrayed me." The nobles stilled. Elena inclined her head, her heart pounding in her chest, because Lysandra knew. She knew what Elena had found. She knew what Elena could have done. And she had chosen to trust her. Or perhaps, chosen to warn her. The queen's lips curved. Elena lifted her own goblet in response, and together, they drank. That night, as the palace quieted, Elena did not leave. Instead, she stood beside the queen's bedchamber, where Lysandra sat in the flickering candlelight. "You could have exposed me," Lysandra murmured. Elena met her gaze. "I still could." A slow smile. "And yet, you won't." Elena smirked. "Not yet." And for the first time in years, Lysandra laughed, because they both knew a queen was only as powerful as the one who held her secrets.